Vale, pues ya estamos grabando la semana número 20 del Pingumingos. Hoy vamos a jugar al Dear Esther.
Dear Esther,
un jueguillo
the gulls do not land here.
Un jueguillo indie.
I've noticed that
Que va
this
a
year
andar.
they seem to shun the place. Maybe it's the depletion of the fishing stock driving them away. Perhaps it's me. When he first landed here, Donnelly wrote that the herds were sickly and their shepherds the lowest of the miserable classes that populate these Hebridean islands. 300 years later, even they have departed.
Voy un poco rápido porque he estado jugando. He intentado poner los subtítulos en español y ya lo he conseguido poner. Así que he estado jugando el primer y me he quedado un poco pillado en el segundo porque no sabía qué hacer. El primero me lo he pasado bien, son 4 niveles, recuerdo. Así que el primero me lo voy a pasar un poco rápido. Eso, ahora tenéis los subtítulos, lo podéis leyendo y así yo también me entero un poco mejor. Que no me viene mal del todo enterarme porque no me estaba enterando mucho.
Those islands in the distance, I am sure, are nothing more than relics of another time, sleeping giants, somnambulist gods laid down for a final dreaming. I wash the sand from my lips and grip my wrist ever more tightly. My shaking arms will not support my fading diaries.
Bueno.
Reading Donnelly by the weak afternoon sunlight. He landed on the south side of the island, followed the path to the bay and climbed the mount. He did not find the caves, and he did not chart the north side. I think this is why his understanding of the island is flawed, incomplete. He stood on the mount and only wondered momentarily how to descend. But then, he didn't have my reasons.
Me está diciendo que no has explorado mucho. Interesante. Había una cueva con un calamar, había cosillas. Yo creo que me salta pistas de audio, qué guapo está eso. Vale. Eso no me lo he
When
hecho.
someone had died or was dying, or was so ill they gave up what little hope they could sacrifice, they cut parallel lines into the cliff, exposing the white chalk beneath. You could see them from the mainland or the fishing boats, and know to send aid or impose a cordon of protection, and wait a generation until whatever pestilence stalked the cliff paths died along with its hosts. My lines are just for this, to keep any would-be rescuers at bay. The infection is not simply of the flesh. They were God-fearing people, those shepherds. There was no love in the relationship. Donnelly tells me that they had one Bible that was passed around in strict rotation. It was stolen by a visiting monk in 1776, 2 years before the island was abandoned altogether. In the interim, I wonder, did they assign chapter and verse to the stones and grasses, marking the geography with a superimposed significance that they could actually walk the Bible and inhabit its contradictions?
Es obligatorio prácticamente dentro de la cueva, por lo que veo. Aquí ya puedo tirar para allá, que es el camino principal. Pero en la cueva hay un texto que antes no me enteré muy bien y aparte es muy bonita.
Dear Esther, I met Paul. I made my own little pilgrimage. My Damascus, a small semi-detached on the outskirts of Wolverhampton. We drank coffee in his kitchen and tried to connect to one another. Although he knew I hadn't come in search of an apology, reason, or retribution, he still spiraled in panic, thrown high and lucid by his own dented bonnet. Responsibility had made him old. Like us, he'd already passed beyond any conceivable boundary of life.
Interesante.
I find myself increasingly unable to find that point where the hermit ends and Paul and I begin. We are woven into a sodden blanket, stuffed into the bottom of a boat to stop the leak and hold back the ocean. My neck aches from staring up at the aerial. It mirrors the dull throb in my gut where I am sure I've begun to form another stone. In my dreams, it forms into a perfect representation of Lot's wife, head over her shoulder, staring along the motorway at the approaching traffic in a vacuum of fatalistic calm.
Vale, pues ya he visto esto y ya puedo tirar. Para acá. Para allá.
The vegetation here has fossilized from the roots up. To think they once grazed animals here, the remnants of occupation being evidence to that. It is all sick to death. The water is too polluted for the fish, the sky is too thin for the birds, and the soil is cut with the bones of hermits and shepherds. I've heard it said that human ashes make great fertilizer, that we could sow a forest from all that is left of your hips and ribcage, with enough left over to thicken the air and repopulate the bay.
Vale. No sé qué hay aquí. La muerte, supongo. No voy a ir hacia la muerte. Por arriba. Es un walking simulator completo, absolutamente. O sea, no hay otra cosa que hacer. Están los 4 botones direccionales y el botón para hacer zoom, que es el clic izquierdo o clic derecho. O sea que una historia full de lore. O sea, un juego full de historia. De la vida de nuestro comentarista. Vale,
Dear
siguiente.
Esther, I have now driven the stretch of the M5 between Exeter and Bristol over 21 times. But although I have all the reports and all the witnesses, and have cross-referenced them within a millimetre using my ordnance survey maps, I simply cannot find the location. You'd think there would be marks to serve as some evidence. It's somewhere between the turn-off for Sanford and the welcome brake services. But although I can always see it in my rear-view mirror, I have as yet been unable to pull ashore.
Vale. Aquí es donde me he quedado. Esta zona he explorado y no he sabido por dónde se sigue. Así que... Sé que el barco tiene un agujero. pero no me entretuve mucho más.
It's only at night that this place makes any sluggish effort at life. You can see the buoy and the aerial. I've been taking to sleeping through the day in an attempt to resurrect myself. I can feel the last days drawing upon me. There's little point now in continuation. There must be something new to find here. Some nook or some cranny that offers a perspective worth clinging to. I've burnt my bridges. I've sunk my boats and watched them go to water.
Ahí no hay nada. Por arriba no puedo ir. Tiene que haber algo en el barco. Tiene que haber algo en el barco alrededores. Y al agua no me puedo tirar, al menos antes lo he intentado y no he podido. Esto no me deja saltarlo. Voy a pasar por aquí, ¿vale? A lo mejor es por ahí, porque por allí no había nada.
I had kidney stones and you visited me in the hospital. After the operation, when I was still half submerged in anesthetic, your outline and your speech both blurred. Now my stones have grown into an island and made their escape, and you have been rendered opaque by the car of a drunk.
Vale. Por aquí no he venido antes. Esto ya es nuevo. Aquí ya empiezo a explorar. Música, vale.
I've begun my ascent on the green slope of the western side. I've looked deep into the mountain from the shaft and understood that I must go up and then find the way under. I will stash the last vestiges of my civilization in the stone walls and work deeper from there. I'm drawn by the aerial and the cliff edge. There is some form of rebirth waiting for me there.
Voy por el camino de troncos, que no parece que pueda pasar bien por el tronco, por encima. A la antena.
The bothy was constructed originally in the early 1700s.
Vale.
By then, shepherding had formalized into a career. The first habitual shepherd was a man called
Jakobson.
Jakobson, from a lineage of migratory Scandinavians. He was not considered a man of breeding by the mainlanders. He came here every summer whilst building the bothy, hoping eventually that becoming a man of property would secure him a wife and a lineage. Donnelly records that it did not work. He caught some disease from his malcontented goats and died 2 years after completing it. There was no one to carve white lines into the cliff for him either.
Vale.
My heart is landfill. These false dawns waking into the still never light. I sweat for you in the small hours and wrap my blankets into a mass. I've always heard the waves break on these lost shores, always the gulls forgotten. I can lift this bottle to my ear, and all there ever is for me is this Hebridean music.
Hombre, ahora con subtítulos el juego está ganando bastante, la verdad.
In a footnote, the editor comments that at this point, Donnelly was going insane as syphilis tore through his system like a drunk driver. He's not to be trusted. Many of his claims are unsubstantiated, and although he does paint a colourful picture, much of what he says may have been derived directly from his fever. But I've been here, and I know, as Donnelly did, that this place is always half imagined. Even the rocks and caves will shimmer and blur with the right eyes.
Vale. Pues para abajo, que esto no es muerto. A la cueva.
Climbing down to the caves, I slipped and fell and have injured my leg. I think the femur is broken.
Vaya.
It is clearly infected. The skin has turned a bright, tight pink, and the pain is crashing in on waves, winter tides against my shoreline, drowning out the ache of my stones. I struggled back to the bothy to rest, but it has become clear that there is only one way this is likely to end. The medical supplies I looted from the trawler have suddenly found their purpose. They will keep me lucid for my final ascent.
El pozo. Vámonos. Al pozo. ¿Me podrá vestir por arriba? Seguramente no. Seguramente, no lo sé.
Donnelly did not pass through the caves. From here on in, his guidance, unreliable as it is gone from me. I understand now that it is between the two of us, and whatever correspondence can be drawn from the wet rocks.
Vale. Está guapa la cueva. Es muy bonita. No sé si puedo pasar por aquí. Me agacho, vale. Hostia, qué bonito. La música es bastante impresionante. Vale, eso es del fuego, las colisiones. Creo que había algo ahí que brillaba, pero no, vale, ahora. Por allá. Y por aquí. Y de nuevo una caída. No sé. Parece que todo lleva aquí. Muchas posibles entradas. Ah, soy bobo, vale, lo pillo, que soy bobo. Coño. No sabía que era la misma. Se debe correr, pero bueno, supongo que le quitaría la gracia. Está bonito el juego, desde luego. Por el bordecito y con buena letra que no vamos a repetir el camino. Que quedan 6 y tengo que ver Obi-Wan. Quiere seccionar, lo tengo pendiente. Ya estoy. Dios, qué guapo todo esto negro y azul. Vale.
I'm traversing my own death throes. The infection in my leg is an oil rig that dredges black muck up from deep inside my bones. I swallow fistfuls of diazepam and paracetamol to stay conscious. The pain flows through me like an underground sea.
Tendré que subir. Supongo. Cerebro. Es una neurona, creo. Mitad del camino del árbol.
This cannot be the shaft they threw the goats into. It cannot be the landfill where the parts of your life that would not burn ended up. It cannot be the chimney that delivered you to the skies. It cannot be the place where you rained back down again to fertilize the soil and make small flowers in the rocks.
Hostia, tú. Qué puto miedo. Subiendo. Está todo como que muy guapo. Es muy bonito el juego. Vale. Por el agüita, supongo. Vale. He muerto. ¿He muerto? No. ¿Un piano? Es una mesa de operaciones, ¿no? Oscuridad completa. Ok. Desde luego, ha sido un viaje. Ahora no me caigo, ¿no? Vale. Uy, cargando. Ah, vale. Siguiente. Creo que este es el último. Vale. Creo que son 4 mapas.
The moon over the Sanford Junction, headlights in your retinas. Donnelly drove a grey hatchback without a bottom. All the creatures of the tarmac rose to sing to him. All manner of symbols crudely scrawled across the cliff face of my unrest. My life reduced to an electrical diagram. All my gulls have taken flight. They will no longer roost on these outcrops. The lure of the moon over the Sanford Junction is too strong.
Vale. Allí hay una cueva. Vamos para allá atravesando los restos de arcos, que no sé si puedo o si puedo.
Dear Esther, I find each step harder and heavier. I drag Donnelly's corpse on my back across these rocks, and all I hear are his whispers of guilt, his reminders, his burnt letters, his neatly folded clothes. He tells me I was not drunk at all.
¿Es una tumba? Accidente de coche.
Paul, by the roadside, by the exit for Damascus, all ticking and cooled, all feathers and remorse, all of these signals routed like traffic through the circuit diagrams of our guts, those badly written boats torn bottomless in the swells, washing us forever ashore.
From here, I can see my armada. I collected all the letters I'd ever meant to send to you, if I'd have ever made it to the mainland, but had instead collected at the bottom of my rucksack, and I spread them out along the lost beach. Then I took each and every one, and I folded them into boats. I folded you into the creases, and then, as the sun was setting, I set the fleet to sail. Shattered into 21 pieces, I consigned you to the Atlantic, and I sat here until I'd watched all of you sink.
¿Qué toca hundirse? Porque aquí pone... En una luz, de pronto pasaste de estar en el cielo a la tierra, a caerte a la tierra. Quizás sí me toque. A lo mejor no. Esto es para volver, esto ya me ha pasado antes. Anterior vez sí que me maté.
Come back.
Vale. Entonces no es para acá. Seguramente sea para arriba. Significa eso, vale. Vamos para arriba. El motivo será subir al faro. Toda la vuelta por el alrededor. Para subir. Me recuerda un poco de Death Stranding. Pero con Death Stranding me pasaba con la música. Que era un Walking Simulator, de llegar al destino. Pero con Death Stranding lo que deseaba que saliera la música, que era buenísima.
For a few minutes as I struggled up the cliff path. I swallowed another handful of painkillers, and now I feel almost lucid. The island around me has retreated to a hazed distance, whilst the moon appears to have descended into my palm to guide me. I can see a thick black line of infection reaching for my heart from the waistband of my trousers. Through the fugue, it's all the world like the path I have cut from the lowlands towards the aerial.
Vale. No puedo subir. No me dejan.
I've begun my voyage in a paper boat without a bottom. I will fly to the moon in it. I've been folded along a crease in time, a weakness in the sheet of life. Now you've settled on the opposite side of the paper to me. I can see your traces in the ink that soaks through the fiber, the pulped vegetation. When we become waterlogged and the cage disintegrates, we will intermingle. When this paper aeroplane leaves the cliff edge and carves parallel vapor trails in the dark, we will come together.
Vaya. Parece que sí que voy a tener que subir. Vale. Los dos
If
gemelos.
only Donnelly had experienced this, he would have realized he was his own shoreline, as am I. Just as I am becoming this island, so he became his syphilis,
Vaya.
retreating into the burning synapses, the stones, the infection.
Arriba. Queda poco.
Bent back like a nail, like a hangnail, like a drowning man clung onto the wheel, drunk and spiraled, washed onto the lost shore under a moon as fractured as a shattered wing. We cleave, we are flight and suspended, these wretched painkillers, this form inconstant. I will take flight, I will take flight.
Vale. Lo pillo. Me suicidaré al final. Sí, está muy cerca, ¿eh? Sí, está a 100 metros, ¿no? Para arriba.
He was not drunk, Esther. He was not drunk at all. He had not drunk with Donnelly or spat Jakobsen back at the sea. He had not careered across the lost shores and terminal beaches of this nascent archipelago. He did not intend his bonnet to be crumpled like a spent tissue by the impact. His windscreen was not star-studded all over like a map of the heavens. His paintwork etched with circuit diagrams, strange fish to call the gulls away. The phosphorescence of the skid marks lighting the M5 all the way from Exeter to Damascus.
Creo que pasó algo de un accidente. Molaría. Exit Damasco.
I have run out of places to climb. I will abandon this body and take to the air.
Vaya.
Dear Esther, I have burnt my belongings, my books, this death certificate. Mine will be written all across this island. Who was Jakobsen? Who remembers him? Donnelly has written of him, but who was Donnelly? Who remembers him? I have painted, carved, hewn, scored into this space all that I could draw from him. There will be another to these shores to remember me. I will rise from the ocean like an island without bottom, come together like a stone, become an aerial, a beacon, that they will not forget you. We've always been drawn here. One day the gulls will return and nest in our bones and our history. I will look to my left and see Esther Donnelly flying beside me. I will look to my right and see Paul Jakobsen flying beside me. They will leave white lines carved into the air to reach the mainland, where help will be sent.
¿Vas a volar? Esther. Oye, pues está igual el jueguillo, me ha gustado. Esta historia de superación de un accidente. Aunque bueno, el equipo al final se acaba suicidando, así que claramente no es superación. Pero bueno. O a lo mejor es libre, a lo mejor sí que lo ha superado. No sé qué representa muy bien, supongo que sí que la ha superado. Si vuela libre. Hasta aquí el día de Esther, creo yo. Buen juego. Gana bastante con sus títulos, la verdad. Y le voy a poner un 7. Me ha parecido en 6,5. 6,5 creo que es una nota más acertada porque es un Walking Simulator. Y es muy tocho, muy pesado, muy vasto en cuanto a la historia. Y muy lento, pero oye, buen jueguillo. Buena banda sonora, buenos gráficos, bastante bonito. Bastante carismático, zona de cuevas, la pintura, los colores, los brillos, las luces. Bastante chulo. Así que voy a ver si queda algo. Vale, pues hasta aquí el jueguillo y nos vemos en el siguiente Pingumingos. Adiós.